Yeah, this is, I'm just letting you know Zoom's on now and it's off mute because people are going to be coming in the next minute or two.
Wait, Cole said he made his own, but it wasn't fighter jets, it was an FBI thing.
Come people. Ozzy, leave it.
Hello.
Hey, good morning. What's up, Miss Claire?
I had the worst weekend. Oof, it was the worst.
Yeah, I heard you went to Callaway Gardens. How was that the worst?
Well,
I saw
That was
pictures
okay.
of your hot air balloons and they were pretty.
there's a turtle on air balloon. It was really
Oh, that's super cool.
But all those other days, I didn't like very much.
Oh yeah, why is that?
I actually did have to clean my bed this weekend.
Oh, clean your bedroom?
Yeah, the entire bedroom.
Wow.
And it was like a huge mess.
Wow.
And I didn't get my school done in time. So
Oh.
I had to do my school Saturday morning and I didn't get electronics at all.
And Sarah laid down the hammer, didn't she?
And
Your mama has a heck of a hammer. I didn't get my work done and down came the hammer. That's great. That's perfect. All right, well, we're gonna have some people online this morning and some people here. We'll figure it out. Who said wahoo? What's wrong with you? You did that on purpose. How are you? All right, good. Yeah, we had an interesting weekend. It was it's like I was telling your mom, it was really nice to see people acting like people again, but it was also a little unsettling because people were really acting like people again. People were super excited for the game. Wahoo! I thought that's what you were doing. Wahoo! Yeah. UVA says that, and as we kick you out of this house, you won't be allowed back anymore. See? University of Virginia, UVA. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hey, what's up? Y'all good? Let's see, who do we have? We have somebody online this morning. We got Miss Lil over here. How you doing? We got Lily over there.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Lily's virtual, yeah. Well, they've got the same thing that a lot of people seem to have today, which is is this allergies or is this something else? Because that seems to be the trend today. We've got like 5 people in that position. It's the time of year when fall allergies hit and nobody knows what to think about it. So
allergies for me.
yeah. Hey y'all. Good morning. Good morning. Those are morning doves, aren't they pretty?
They're pretty. We're fighting like grandma's cardinals.
Mhm. So my morning doves, they come in pairs. And here, I'll see if I can show them to you, Lily. I don't know if you'll be able to see them from this far, but they're out there on my feeder. But yeah, I've got, those are 3. So somewhere there's a 4th one. But they love to come together as they always come as pairs, and then they go back. Two of them like roost up in this tree over here. And they're always together. Oh, one of them left. It's funny, none of my other birds always come in pairs, but these guys do. It's just what they do. They're always in pairs like that. Pretty cool. Turn that back around. There we go. So we had another student over the end of last week who might be joining us. I don't know if she will or not, but her mom was messaging me, so we might get one more person coming in kind of late, which is fine. We have room for one more. So who are we missing? Annabella. I don't see Annabella. Okay. Yeah, we'll give her a minute since we're still a bit early. Anybody do anything fun over the weekend?
Went to Cellular Gardens.
Yes, I saw.
Did you see the zipline course?
Oh, the Tree Tech Adventure. We were gonna go on it, but we did make reservations.
Oh, I went on that, and it is terrifying.
I love Tree Tech. That's actually my.
It was Lewis's shoe.
That's,
Drew's looking around like, what was that noise?
that's actually my. Ozzy, but then it came up from over there. That's actually my. That noise, like that's actually where my first golf tournament is.
At Callaway Gardens? Have you done it yet, or you still have to do it?
September 11th.
So you're getting ready for your very first ever tournament? You've just been practicing, or you've done some, haven't you?
Yeah, I've done
Okay.
5 seasons.
Okay, I was gonna say I thought you'd competed. Awesome. Very, very cool.
We got to watch the glow, go on the glow.
Did y'all see that?
I did.
So that dove, I have that one random ear of corn just hanging out there on that little stick to see if anybody wants to eat it. That guy right there, the one that just hopped up, he tried to land on that ear of corn and failed and bounced off like, boing. It was pretty good. It was, yes. It was more like a slingshot, reverse slingshot. All right, well, we'll go ahead and let me unlock Ozzy now that people are in the door, because he just barks when people come through. Then he sees time. Do you want to come out, Trent? Yeah. Come out whenever you want. Okay. It's funny. He barks when everybody comes in, and then once everybody's in, he's fine, but you come through that door, man. All right, so we're gonna start our new unit 3, and I'm pretty sure I got a test from everybody, which is great. There's so many times that somebody's missing a test, but most everybody did really, really well. So I'm happy. I'm really happy. I was looking at them this morning. I got to look over them one more time today and get a strong idea of how everything looks. But just my brief glance looks good. Yes, ma'am.
Finish my homework. Well, the thing I was doing last time, because I didn't have any pictures of what happened.
Oh yeah. So you'll have time to do that today. So for lab, everybody's going to have time to do that today. So Lily, same thing. All the pictures are posted in the Dropbox file, but they're also, you can look at the ones here to see kind of a final, and I'll post a final in the Dropbox file too, because some of them really grew in like the last 2 or 3 days. And I apologize that there weren't steady pictures over the weekend, but I wasn't here, and my designated picture taker kept forgetting about it. So although it wasn't Drew, don't look at Drew, it wasn't him. Yeah, so it wasn't Drew. Anyway, the other one was designated picture taker, and he failed miserably. So all right, yeah. So today for that lab, what you'll do is you'll just finish it by being sure that you complete everything in your lab and show it to me, because you're going to keep that one in your binder, and we'll work on making like a group. We're going to make like a group graph with everybody's data together, which should be pretty cool. And for today's lab, so that everybody knows, and Lily, so that you know, it's 2 parts. There's a part A and a part B. We're going to do the part B entirely in class. It involves diffusion, and we're going to be using an indicator for starch and little cubes of potato, and that we'll do in class. So if you're not here, like Lily, if you're not here, that's just going to be, it's a wash, it's excused. We'll tell you how it went, but you don't have to get that data. If the other part of it is we're going to be making a model of a cell membrane and showing how it can be somewhat permeable. And we're going to have to set it up today, and then I'm going to look at it tomorrow, and I'll send pictures of that data for you tomorrow. So you won't be able to finish it till tomorrow. So even if you're not here, you'll have all your information by tomorrow, and you'll be able to complete it next week. And that one you're going to turn in. You ever get an itch like right in the middle of your back where you can't reach? That's where I am. All right, so today we're starting our new unit, which is cells and what is life. So here are our cells. What are cells? What is life? All this good stuff. Are we going to go? There we go. No, a brand new unit. This is getting into the stuff I really, really love. Like ecology and stuff is cool. I enjoy it, but I really love this kind of stuff. And microbiology, which is anything that you're looking at that's so tiny you have to look at it under a microscope, is really fun. I really like it. So first things we're going to talk about now are characteristics of living things. So what does it mean to be a living thing? So living things we also can call organisms. That's a more scientific word. So all living things are made of cells. That's the first big point. All living things are made of cells. And we have two main big categories here. We can say they are unicellular or multicellular. So unicellular obviously has one cell. There's that uni. What's another word that has uni that means one? Can you think of anything like that?
Unicycle.
Unicorn, unicycle. Yeah, unicorn has what? One horn, and a unicycle has what? One wheel. There you go. Unicycle, unicorn. Have you got a unicorn on your shirt? Ah, Darcy's wearing a unicorn. We don't get better than this. All right, there you go. So yeah, uni, that you know what that is. And how about multi? What's something that has multi in it? What's a word with multi? Drew? Multiverse. Ooh, that's a good one. What else? Can you give another multivitamin? Multivitamin, right? Lots of vitamins in one pill. Multicolor, all those things. So these are our main categories. And of course, there's different ways to categorize. And we're going to talk a lot about categorizing in this unit, especially when we get talking about different types of organisms beyond just the cellular level. So you can say there are some that are unicellular and some that are multicellular, but then there's other ways to categorize. And we'll talk about that too. So living things respond. This is another way to tell if it's a living thing. So a stimulus is a change in a surrounding. And an organism is going to respond to a stimuli. All right, so let's think. Can anybody think of an example of a change in your surrounding and how you might respond? What's a change in your surrounding? Rearranging the furniture. Okay, that's a good one. Rearranging the furniture. Do you know somebody who does that habitually? Drew, I think you do. Yeah. My mother cannot stand having her furniture stay the same. So she is constantly rearranging her furniture, always rearranging her furniture. Yep. So, oh yeah. Now we have a little, that's a redheaded, nope, that's a female purple-headed house finch out there. Everybody's admiring all the birds today. Yep. So what's something else?
Lily's on mute.
Yeah, that's okay. She can be on mute. She doesn't need to talk right at the moment. Actually, it's better that way. If there's noise in the background, it doesn't disrupt us. She knows how to do this because she's done it before. Good boy, Oz. So Drew, if your furniture was changed, that's something in your environment that's changed. It's a stimulus. How might you respond?
By sitting down and wrong places sometimes.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, yeah. Go looking for a chair and it's not there.
House is different though because then you go like this.
Mm.
For a light switch, there's never one there.
Yep. So here's another great example. So we had some trees back here in the woods. All right. And when we cut them down, there was suddenly more sunlight making its way to the other trees and things that were both smaller trees and shrubs that were on the ground. And when the sunlight started coming in from that angle, you could watch all those trees grow towards it. Have you ever seen a plant lean towards the sun? Yeah. Have you ever seen what sunflowers do during the day? Anybody know what they do? They actually move with the sun. Their little faces will pick up, like they're kind of hanging in the morning, and they'll pick up and they'll turn with the sun and they'll kind of go back to sleep. Now, they don't have muscles to move like we move. So it's a really complex process that involves how much pressure is inside of those cells. So the cells, plant cells, which we're going to be learning about more, plant cells are kind of rectangular, boxy, right? And they're more rigid. They have cell walls, but they can become more or less rigid based on how much fluid they hold in that big center vacuole. So if a plant needs to bend towards light or move with the sun, it basically what it does is it puts, like, say my arm is a stem, okay? And the sun is over here and I need to get this way. What I'm going to do as a plant is all these cells on this side are going to have less water in them. And these are going to have more, which is going to cause the whole stem to bend. And the plant does that all with chemical communication within the plant itself, because that's cool, because plants don't have, like we're saying, they don't have muscles and stuff to do that moving. So another thing to realize before we go to the next slide is this word, stimulus. It says a stimulus. That is singular. Does anybody know the plural?
Multi?
Stimuli. This is one of those words where you get an I for the plural. So you have stimulus, and that's one, and stimuli would be more than one. So organisms grow, develop, and reproduce. Organisms grow by increasing in size and becoming more complex. And organisms reproduce by producing offspring. And there are lots of different ways that organisms reproduce. Sometimes it's just a matter of dividing and taking one thing and turning it into two. That's the simplest form. And that's what's in this picture here. It's a picture of a cell dividing. It's a graphic. That's pretty cool because obviously that's not going to be quite that clear and fancy looking if we took a real picture. They do have real pictures, but they're not that involved. So life comes from life. Can you tell what that is?
A baby. Dinosaur.
Could be either. It's likely because there's an umbilical cord here. This is likely mammalian, but you know, even chickens have a similar looking thing kind of going on with their yolk sac. So at this point, it's hard to tell, but this is just an example of this is an embryo of some kind. And right, it has 4 little buds here. And here's the interesting thing. You can look at most animal life forms in particular, okay, pretty much most animal life forms, not insects, but let's say reptiles and mammals and even some fish, though not quite so much, will look almost exactly like this at this stage in development. It's hard to tell a shark from a bear from a human. They're all or from a turtle. They're all very similar at this point.
What's that?
This is a yolk sac, which is what makes me believe this is mammalian. So it's one of these early embryological features that goes away as this organism develops. Like, you know, if you ever open a chicken egg, there's a yolk in it, right? But even mammals have what's called a yolk sac for a while. And that's pretty cool, right? So I don't know what that is. Could be a person, could be a dog, could be a turtle, because they're all very, very similar at this point, which is pretty fascinating how much differentiation takes place over time.
Probably an alligator snapping turtle.
It could be. It very well could be. And do you know that we all start out with a tail like this that eventually develops out, and we're only left with this tiny little, you know, we all have a little tiny tailbone, that little coccyx. You don't see it, but if you fall and break it, you will feel it. Yeah, we all start that way.
Isn't it kind of like a tadpole turning into a frog but reverse?
Sorta.
So like instead of the legs going away, instead of the tail going away.
No, it's forward. It's not reverse, it's forward. If you think about it, if you've ever watched a tadpole develop into a frog, basically you're getting to watch embryological development on the outside because it's an amphibian, so it happens outside. Whereas with mammals, it happens inside because mammals carry their young inside until they're developed. So that's why amphibians are particularly cool because you can watch them develop.
One time we kept tadpoles in a tank
Mm-hmm.
and we saw them develop into frogs.
It's freaking cool. Very cool.
I got to pick up a little baby turtle at Callaway at the butterfly garden.
So let's talk for a bit about this concept of spontaneous generation. Okay, so for the longest time, the idea that life comes from life wasn't very well understood. Okay, we understand it now that in order to get a living thing, it had to come from basically the same living thing. But in the past, that's not what people thought. So if we go back to 1668, so think about it, 1668, were there colonists in North America at that time? Were there already British over here? Think about it. 1668. Yeah, there were. Yeah, we were over here. Because remember, you know, we get the whole 1492 is the whole Columbus coming over to the Caribbean area. And then right around in this time, yeah, this is right around the time when you're dealing with like people starting to come over and starting to get to the point where we're going to establish permanent colonies, right? So, but this is pre-founding of the United States, right? This is before Declaration of Independence, Revolutionary War time. So this dude, Francisco Redi, who's an Italian guy, he comes up with this experiment to test this idea of spontaneous generation. Because people are like, oh, if you put a piece of meat down, it will grow maggots. It will create them. It will create maggots. Maggots come from meat. Think about it. If you leave a steak out on the table, it's got maggots, they must come from it, right? So he was like, no, this doesn't make sense. So what he did is he got 2 jars like this, one covered and one uncovered. And he successfully demonstrated that maggots come from fly eggs, not from meat. So this disproves the whole concept of spontaneous generation, which was basically, if you leave that steak out on the counter and it suddenly has maggots, must have been because, you know, the steak grew the maggots, which isn't what happens.
Do maggots turn into flies?
They do. Maggots are the larval stage of a housefly. So that fly would come and lay those eggs, and those eggs would hatch into maggots, and they'll grow, and eventually they'll turn into flies over time.
Another question.
Yeah.
Flies are sometimes smaller than maggots.
Sometimes, yeah. It's when you watch, especially like insect and arthropod development, it's really interesting how they change.
Do they like shrink?
Sometimes a little, a little bit. So spontaneous generation doesn't occur. The next person to prove it was Louis Pasteur. Okay, this word right here, this guy's name, Pasteur. You ever heard the word pasteurized before? You probably have.
I've heard of Pasteur, somebody. He was the one who created the rabies vaccine.
Okay. So Louis Pasteur, in particular, this guy, he's a French scientist, and he came up with this whole concept of pasteurizing, but he didn't realize that he was creating a whole process named after himself. He was just trying to further disprove spontaneous generation. So what he did is he had beef broth, and this is 1859. So this is later. We're in the point now where there is a United States of America, right? In history, think about it. This is much later. This isn't that long ago. This is, 150 years ago or whatever. Not too terribly long ago. So what he did is he had beef broth, and he sterilized it by boiling it in a swan neck flask, which means he boiled it to the point where there were no microorganisms that could live in it because they're not going to survive boiling. Okay. And he boiled it in this swan neck flask, which is this shape here, like a swan. Ooh, it's pretty. And that's a flask which has a long bending neck, and it traps dust particles and other contaminants before they reach the body of the flask. So because of this shape, stuff's not falling in it due to gravity, right? Dust and stuff like that. If they fall, it's going to land here, and that's as far as it's going to get, is the point. All right. So then what he did is, if the beef broth was boiled and the neck of the flask was broken, the broth being exposed to air, it eventually became cloudy, and that let him know that there were microbes living in it. And this proved that there was no spontaneous generation, since the boiled broth, if never exposed to the air, remains sterile. And this not only settled the philosophical problem of the origin of life at the time, like life comes from life, but it also placed on solid ground the science of bacteriology, which relied on proven techniques of sterilization and aseptic manipulation. Okay, before Louis Pasteur was like, look, dudes, there are microorganisms floating around in the air. And if you leave this beef broth here exposed to the air, they're going to fall in, and you're going to get this rotten, nasty, disgusting beef broth, but full of microbes. But if you don't let the microbes in and you've sterilized it, and you've killed any that could have started out in there, it's going to stay this way. This is how we can food safely and not get sick, right? And this whole idea of bacteriology, before this, the concept that there were little tiny things that you can't see all around on surfaces in the air didn't exist. So if you're out on the battlefield, now this is 1859. So this is why it's important. There's this whole Civil War, right? People out on the battlefield at the time who were losing limbs. People were getting blown up by cannons. And if your foot got blown up and it was in pretty bad shape, they weren't going to try and put it back together. They were just going to cut it off, right? So they're going to come at you with a knife that they haven't cleaned, not clean, and they're going to cut it off. And then they're going to go to the next guy, use the same knife, maybe wipe it off, cut his leg off, because there's no concept that you could make somebody sick from using materials that weren't clean or from passing things from person to person, because that didn't exist until this happened. So right around this time was when we started doing that. And right around the Civil War is when we realized, oh, shoot, there is stuff in the air and stuff on surfaces and stuff on our equipment, on our surgical equipment, that can really hurt people. So it's bacteriology. We owe all of this to Louis Pasteur, and the fact that you can drink milk and juice and whatever else, and it's pasteurized and not get sick, that's also Louis Pasteur. Thank goodness for him.
My dad's great grandfather, great grandfather, when he was farming one day, he saw this airplane explode
Whoa.
in the middle of the air,
Mm-hmm.
and over months and months, he kept
Ooh.
finding bodies in the farm.
Was this like a World War I thing or World War II thing?
World War I.
Yeah, back in the day. Mm-hmm. Because that would have been, was that in Scotland? Or yeah, that would make sense. Yep. And they will rot, right? That's what happens because yeah. But thank goodness for those microbes. They're here to break down stuff. That's their job. But we walk around today and we're squirting hand sanitizer and we don't even think about it. But hand sanitizer wouldn't be a thing if it hadn't been for Louis Pasteur, who was like, hey, there are things you can't see and they're living everywhere. So organisms have needs. All right, what kind of needs do organisms have? Well, living things need water. And what do they need water for? Dissolving chemicals. We're going to call water the universal solvent, which means it dissolves things. Solvents dissolve solutes, right? So your body is full of chemicals. Every time you eat, you take in chemicals. They're all chemicals. Chemicals aren't just things from a lab. Chemicals are everything. Everything is chemicals, right? Everything is chemistry. Life is chemistry. And even things that aren't living is chemistry. There was a European study 2 years ago, and it was some ridiculous thing, like 38% of the people who took the study said they wanted to live in a world without chemicals, which was basically the result of the study was to show scientific illiteracy. People don't understand science. You can't live in a world without chemicals. There would be no world, right? So you have chemicals that you're constantly taking into your body and they need to be dissolved. So that's what your water in your body is for. Living things also need an energy source. So autotrophs. What's an autotroph? Sorry, Ozzy. What's an autotroph? An organism that does what? Produces its own energy from a non-living source, right? So, and heterotrophs are going to consume things. So in this case, it's kind of like a blurry artsy picture, but there's some grass there. Oh, Ozzy, I'm sorry, but my leg was falling asleep. He's mad at me because I just shifted. Sorry, he went, He's mad. So that if that's grass in that picture, obviously it's getting energy from the sun and creating energy that can be used by the heterotrophs that are going to consume it, like cows or whatever's grazing. Organisms need living space for shelter, right? Living space could be under a rock. Living space could be in a house. Or if you're a microorganism, maybe living space could be on your skin or inside your mouth or in your nose. So fun stuff. And then homeostasis. Here's this big word again. Does anybody remember what homeostasis is? Homeostasis. So homeostasis, you can think of it like a balance, but homeostasis is the idea that the chemical energy and you could pick almost anything. Say salt. The salt levels inside an organism are the same as outside an organism. Remember, I think we talked about it, slugs. Did we talk about it? Was the other group. You ever seen what happens if you put salt on a slug?
They shrivel up.
Yeah, they shrivel up. Why do they shrivel up?
Because they try to balance the salt level on the inside of the body to the outside of the body, and they let all of it out.
That is exactly right. They're trying to balance how much salt's inside their body with how much salt is outside their body. And all the cells in their body say, whew, that's a lot of salt outside. We need water to dissolve that salt. Go back to water, right? And they let all the water out of their cells to try and make a balance to go dissolve all this extra salt. And then bleh, they shrivel up into nothing. And that's how you see this big puddle of yuck, right? Yep, that's homeostasis. But it happens with lots of things. Slugs are just an example. Most people have seen that. All right, so classifying. This is where it gets really fun. I love classifying organisms. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's so fun. And they've changed it in recent years. So it's thrown me for a loop. So when I was getting my degree in biology, we didn't have this domain at the top. I mean, it was there, but it's not such a thing. They've changed it some. We had kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, which is still a thing. And domain was a thing, eukarya and archaebacteria. but they've changed the way the kingdoms work now by kind of looping the domains in, whereas in the past, they didn't do that. So it's a little different now. So we have domains and kingdoms. I'm gonna scooch this down so we can see this. So archaea, okay, archaea are the domain of single-celled prokaryotic organisms. All right, so this is organisms who lack a defined nucleus. So these are very primitive. They've got distinct molecular characteristics that separate them from bacteria or the other more prominent group of prokaryotes. So this is right here, archaea, all right? So it says halophile, methanophile, thermophile. Okay, you can probably learn something about a couple of these. Does anybody remember what phile or philos or phyla, if you see that means? We talked, I think, maybe about Philadelphia, that has it in it, phyla at the beginning. You also can have hydrophilic organisms. So do you remember what it means?
No, but I'm starting to wonder about that Philadelphia cream cheese.
I love you. You're so fun. So phyla or phile all come from the Greek word philos. And Greek people have multiple words for love. And one of them, philos, is like their word for brotherly love, non-romantic love, basically, like brother to brother, friend to friend. So we think of it as like or love when it comes to science. So this says thermophile. So what would that mean? Thermophile.
Temperature level?
Yeah, like or love, usually things that like or love extreme temperatures. And here's one, methanophile. Okay, not methane, methane. So these are organisms that like methane or live on methane. So archaea, you're talking about extreme organisms. These are really old primitive organisms that can live in extraordinary conditions. Then we have eubacterium, which is plural for eubacteria. And we also just usually call them bacteria. When you're talking about bacteria, it's eubacteria. So this is formerly used to describe and differentiate any group of prokaryotic true bacteria from archaebacteria. So it separates these guys from bacteria that have a defined nucleus and whatnot. So bacteria are genetically and morphologically means the shape, how they look, how they're formed, right? Distinct from organisms classified in the other two domains of life, which are archaea and eubacteria. And archaea and eukarya. These are eukaryotes. So eukaryota or eukarya, you are a eukaryote. Everybody here is a eukaryote. You're a eukaryote, I'm a eukaryote, we're all eukaryotes. Eukaryotes is a domain that contains organisms that have a clearly defined nucleus in their cell. And, oh, you're so grumbly today. And they have well-defined chromosomes, which are the bodies that are going to hold your genetic information. So pretty much every organism you see that you're familiar with is eukaryotic. So when you're thinking about archaebacteria or archaea, it's old stuff that you're probably not going to come in contact with. So eukarya, here we are, subdivided into 4 kingdoms: Protista, Plantae, Fungi, and Animalia. So it used to be your 5 kingdoms used to be Animalia, Plantae, Fungi, Protista, and then Monera. And Monera was one that kind of included all of this prokaryotic organisms. But now we've kind of moved them out into their own area. And now we have archaea and then eukarya, and then the 4 under eukarya. So we've got Protista, Plantae, Fungi, and Animalia. And this you're going to want to memorize, folks. When it comes to your 5 kingdoms of eukaryotic organisms, these are definitely what you want to memorize. So an example of, here's archaea, okay? See how they're very basic looking. And here's your bacteria. And then under eukarya, you've got Protista, Plantae, Fungi, Animalia.
Do you mind if I take a picture?
Of course you may, of course. So this is something to memorize for sure. And actually, I think it may be on the back of your binder. It might be on the back of your binder. There's something similar on the back of your binder, for sure. But yeah, this is definitely, you want to know a couple things when we get into classification. You're going to want to know your Protista, Plantae, Fungi, Animalia. And then you're going to want to know this one right here. If we go back one, go back, nope, two, that. Domain, kingdom, file, and class, order, family, genus, species. That is definitely something you should memorize, have in your head, be able to spit out really quickly. Domain, kingdom, file, and class, order, family, genus, species. There is King, what is it? King Philip, oh shoot, came over for good spaghetti. And if you remember domain, you can throw that. It used to just be King Philip came over for good spaghetti because we didn't throw in domain. But now that we put in domain, some people say things like dopey King Philip came over for good spaghetti. And if you can remember that, you'll be able to do this. But this is a memorize for the rest of your life. Domain, kingdom, file, class, order, family, genus, species, and then plantae, animalia, protista, fungi. Definitely commit to memory.
On the back of the binder, underneath domain, there's something that says life.
Yeah, that's just meaning like all life falls under that. Like all life, and then this is how we categorize it. So if you're alive, you go in a domain. And if you're in a domain, that domain is further broken down into kingdom, and then file and class, order, family, genus, species. So here's something to look at. If I have it, I don't know if I put it in here or not. I meant to look it up if I didn't. Oh, I'll show you. So I'm going to move this over and I'll show you because I meant to add it to your slides. But you can look at how humans are categorized, which is pretty cool. So what you want to look for is come on, get out of the way. Great book should not be there. Sorry, anywhere but there. All right. Taxonomy of humans. Here we go. I'm going to move this back up out of the way. I just wanted it down so I could see what I was typing. So human taxonomy, and I'll add an image for you. This is how we fall. It's probably a prettier one. Here's a prettier one. So this is how we fall. Show me a nice one. Show me a big picture. Oh, Lordy. It doesn't want to show me a nice picture, does it? It's going to make life difficult. I just want a pretty one. Go back to there. Nope, that's not humans. I'm trying to find a good one where I can see it clearly. Well, we could go back to the boring looking one over there. That right there is dog. Here's a good example. Let's look at dog. Okay, so your dog, kingdom, Animalia. Obviously, if we're going to do domain, is it going to be archaea or eukarya? It's an easy one. Archaea or eukarya? If we don't have the domain. No, archaea is the old stuff. Eukarya. You're a eukaryote, I'm a eukaryote, we're all eukaryotes, right? Archaea is the old stuff. The stuff that lives down in like deep sea vents and you don't see it, and it's, yeah,
Like
really old.
sewer pythons and alligators.
Even less complex. Yeah.
But they do.
So let me show you. Your kingdom here, Animalia. All right. Animals. All right. Now then that further gets broken down into phylum. All right. Let me tell you something about phylum. This is a cool one. You hear often that we classify animals. One of the big ways we classify up at the very top is we decide whether things are vertebrates or invertebrates, right? Wrong. It's not about whether they're vertebrates or invertebrates. It's about whether or not they're chordates. And here's the difference. Okay. What does it mean to be a vertebrate? You tell me. Somebody tell me. Drew. Whether or not you have a backbone. So give me an example of an invertebrate. An ant. Great. It's an arthropod, right? No backbone. A worm. Good. Very good. A turtle. Okay. So a backbone meaning a spine, right? Meaning all those little vertebrae stuck together in a column. And what runs through the middle of them?
Discs.
There are discs in between them to help cushion them. It's a hollow tube made of a bunch of little vertebrae. What's running through all of them? Do you know? Nerves. Yeah. Your spinal cord, right? Okay. So let me ask you this. If your spinal cord runs through your backbone and it's bones, right? And that makes you a vertebrate. And tell me about a shark. What do you know about sharks? Do sharks have bones? No bones. What are sharks made of? They have teeth in their jaw. They're made of cartilage. They have a skeleton, but it is not bone. It is all cartilage, like your nose and your ears. Their jaw is cartilage, but their teeth are rooted into like a little bit of bone in their jaw, but the rest of their body is all cartilage. They don't have a skeleton made of bone. They have a skeleton made of cartilage. So here's the thing. A shark and a skate and a ray, these are all a phylum right here. A class, sorry, not phylum. It's a class called chondrichthyes, which is all a class of organisms that are made entirely of their skeletons made entirely of cartilage, not bone, but they are chordates. They do possess a central nerve cord, a spinal cord, just like you, but they don't have bone around it. They have cartilage. So we don't categorize by whether something is a vertebrate or an invertebrate. We categorize by whether or not it has a central nerve cord. So that's chordate, which is chordata. So are you a chordate? Think about it. Do you have a central nerve cord?
Yes.
Yes, you're a chordate, and you're also a vertebrate. A shark is a chordate, but it's not a vertebrate by technical term.
I was thinking that's why the only like the job of shark in museums, like they find megalodon jaws.
That's all they have. Yeah. Where's the rest of it? Right. Yeah, exactly. If you've ever been to a museum and seen a giant megalodon mouth hanging up from the ceiling, you're like, oh, where's the rest of it? Well, it's not bone. It's just like your ears and your nose and inside your joints where you have cartilage. That's what they're made of. Skates and rays are the same way. So if you see rays and skates, they're all the same. They don't have a spine, a bony spine. So we have what we call chondrichthyes. And prior to that, and this is like where you get into the whole bony fish versus that's osteichthyes. And so you go from chondrichthyes, where you have these entirely cartilaginous fish, to osteichthyes, which are bony fish. But then you also have a group in the middle called agnathans, and they're the ones with the bony jaws, but they're fish. They're not like big sharks. They're littler fish. They have the bony jaws, but they don't have bony bodies. So it's very interesting. So then the next thing we have under chordata, which means, okay, so this organism is an animal. This organism has a central nerve cord. This organism is a mammal. What's a mammal? How do you categorize a mammal?
Animal with warm blood.
That's one way. What else?
And they breathe oxygen. Whales are actually the largest mammals.
They are.
The blue whale.
Yeah. What, Drew? What else?
They have hair. They
Yeah.
give live birth, and they breastfeed.
That's it. Okay. Yeah. They produce milk for their young. Yep. So mammals typically have hair. Now, sometimes you're going to think like, does a whale have hair? Sometimes they do have smaller structures that are similar to hair, but typically mammals have hair. Mammals often have differentiated teeth also. That's one more thing that you didn't mention. So like we said, remember this, we said the other day, you can look at mammals, you can look at organisms and like open their mouth. Like I opened Ozzy's mouth and I said, what kind of teeth does he have? He has different teeth for different structures, for different jobs, different structure teeth for different jobs. And then mammals also typically give live birth, but not all of them. There's one group that doesn't. They typically give live birth and they produce milk for their young. Do you know the group that doesn't give live birth? Do you know?
I think tiger sharks give live birth.
They're fish. Some fish will give live birth. Do you know, Drew?
Platypus.
Platypus. Okay, platypus is a monotrim. Monotrims are things like platypuses and echidnas, and they're very early evolved mammals. And here's the weird thing. Do you know how a platypus produces milk for its young? Do you know, Drew?
Sweat.
Yeah, it sweats it basically. They basically sweat out. It's sort of like sweating out their milk. They're modified sweat glands, like sweat glands modified to produce milk for their offspring, which is basically mammalian milk glands are similar. They're like further, more complex evolution modified sweat glands, which is kind of wild. But yeah, so you've got monotrims, platypus and echidna, and these are mammals, but they're not mammals that have live young. They lay eggs, right? A platypus lays eggs. Platypus is like nature's or God's joke to the world. Like, what is that thing? What does that thing do?
Is it a beaver?
Right, what is it? We don't know. Perry, that's all we know, right? So then you look here, order, carnivora. What do you suppose that means?
Carnivores.
Yeah, it's a carnivore. So we know it's an animal. It has a central nerve cord. It's a mammal. It's a carnivore. Okay, Canidae. So here's a family, Canidae and then Canis. So Canidae is like a higher order of things that are starting to look like, what do these two words look like? Look like another word you might know?
Canine.
Canine, right? You got it. You got it. And then C, lupus. Okay, does anybody know what lupus is? I know it because I have it. But
Someone calls him that.
yeah, somebody calls him lupus.
No.
They call him Luke.
Okay, who knows? Okay, lupus, and you can also find the same root in the word lupine. How about Remus lupin turns into a
Wolf.
wolf? Lupus is wolf. That's exactly what that is. Now, weirdness enough, like lupus, the disease lupus, which is like what I'm messing around with. It's called that because you can get a skin rash that sometimes back in the day, they're like, looks like a wolf bite, you know, just it's a bad rash. So, oh, maybe a wolf bit you, that kind of thing. Bite of the wolf. So lupus, that's where that comes from. And then when you get C, okay, so this is Canis. This is your genus. Your species is C. lupus, which would be Canis lupus. And then this is your subspecies where it says Canis lupus familiaris. What would familiaris do you suppose mean?
Family.
Familiar, yeah, it means basically domesticated. It's familiar. It's not a wild dog. It's a familiar, a domesticated dog. Yeah, let's see if I can find one more fun one before our time is up. Yeah, Lewis, what you got?
I saw a picture of you guys going through a wall at platform 9.
That's great, isn't it? I love it. Let's see. Oh, here's another. See, it shows you where they go. See this one. Animals in this family include dogs, wolves, coyotes, foxes. This is dogs and wolves and coyotes, but not foxes. See, this is how you just keep going as you go. Here's a human one. So human, we categorize as animals, or domain, obviously, eukarya, right? Chordate, we've got a central nerve cord. We're mammals. Order primates. So when you start talking about order primates in this case, we are most similar structurally to primates. Now, when you get here, Homidae, this is when you start dealing with humans. But from here down, this includes other types of humans that no longer exist. But like you hear about Neanderthals were not, yeah, Homo sapiens, there have been more than one Homo sapiens, but we are Homo sapiens sapiens, basically. A second sapiens is what we add, Homo sapiens sapiens. But Neanderthals were like a different species. They would fall under this genus here. They're same here, but they're not the same here. And basically Homo sapiens outcompeted them, which is how we get from one species to another. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. All right. So that is about this whole lesson. I'm trying to see if there's another really fun one to look at before. Oh, here you go. Look at that one. So this shows what fits into this group. So when you're in a, oh, that one's going to be too complicated to explain in a short time. Oh, there's little people. So look, Homidae, this is what falls under Homidae. So it's these species of now human and this particular type of chimp, which is likely a bonobo chimp. Whereas over here, you've got other primates like these are monkeys. Monkeys and chimps are not the same thing, but like a spider monkey or a lemur, those kinds of things, right? Those would fall into primate, but not into Homidae. Homidae is where you start getting bonobo chimpanzees, which are, if you take genetic, oh, here's a good one for you. If you compare a human's genes to a bonobo chimp, which is our closest relative, genetically speaking, most similar genetically, what percentage do you think is shared? Like 98 is right. We are 98% genetically identical to a bonobo chimp. That 2% is the difference between a bonobo and a human, which is wild. Because if you look at a bonobo and look at a human, they are not the same thing. Bonobo is smart, but he's not going to be sitting up here teaching biology class, right? Yeah.
We're also like related to bananas.
Oh, yeah.
And that makes me feel bad.
Everything.
Breakfast.
Because we're all composed of the same stuff.
And we're 95% mushrooms too.
Yeah, it's amazing how similar all life is when you start talking about the types of chemicals that compose different organisms. And then when you get into genetics and whatnot, it's pretty cool. And we'll be talking more about this dude Linnaeus in the next couple weeks. And Linnaeus is the guy who's like really responsible for all of the categorization and taxonomy. It's called taxonomy. I love it. So, yep. So I think that's good for today. I'm going to let Lily go. Hi, Lily. We love you. Hope everybody in your house feels better. And we're going to go ahead and get ready for lab whenever y'all are ready to go.
Bye.
Bye, Lil.
Bye.